Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Night Vision. So glad that you could join us. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if you're just finding us, extra special welcome to you. And I would want to let you know that starting the beginning of March, I'm going to be moving my time slot forward to midnight Eastern time instead of 11 Eastern time on Friday nights. So, and there's real good reason for that, because we have enticed a wonderful new show onto KGRA. And it happens to be my good friend Ellie from Australia, who, as many of you may have found her on YouTube as I did, she's my favorite YouTuber. She has a couple of YouTube channels, one called Ellie Dreams Down Under and another one called The Universe Always Wins. And then she has a podcast where she teaches, it's an instructional podcast for tarot. So it's really, really interesting. I'm not going to delay any further. I'm going to bring Ellie on right now, and we're going to talk about it. Hey, Ellie.
Hey, Renee. Good to see you.
I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this now for a little while. After I was able to entice you over to KGRA along with Bill and Eric.
You have picked me up. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to recover. Thank you so much. I was listening to the intro and I'm thinking, gosh, you make me sound like something to look forward to. I hope I'm there next week when I show up.
Oh my gosh. I watch every single show that you do, as I've told you. And you usually know that because I comment a lot. I definitely always hit the like button.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you. A lot of times I comment and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm commenting too much, if I'm, putting my 2 cents in there too much. But I know that comments are good on YouTube and they're good for the algorithms. So
it's all about the algorithm, and it's a very mysterious algorithm. Nobody understands it, but we just try and go with it, whatever it is. But yeah, but you and I also chat. We seem to find a way, even with the distance between us, with me being in Australia and you being in the US, we still seem to find a way to spend a lot of airtime together, don't we?
We do. Yeah. And I love that. That was my scheme from the beginning, at least just to spend time chatting, and then that it's translated onto the air is wonderful. But yeah, Ellie's channels are very different, and her show on KGRA is going to yet be another different show. And the name of it is Human Ascension with Ellie. And it kind of developed just through Ellie's research that she was doing for her other channels, things that she was coming across. And she's been studying everything from the Bible to tarot to Plato to God knows what.
All the ancient wisdoms
and be sort of converging into the idea of humans ascending, or humans being in a stage of ascension right now. And it does kind of feel that way to me, that human beings are going through something. And I think, in some ways, all the trouble that we're in, all the fighting and the divisiveness that we're in. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing over there. I'm so sorry. Rookie mistake.
I can't even hear it.
Oh, good. Anyhow, but there just seems to be something in the air. I hear people talking about it. I've heard you talking about it on your show. I've been sensing stuff, from what I read and pick up. So, what do you think? Is there something really going on here?
Yeah. Do you know what? I really do. And I'm actually really excited about the prospect of examining this in the level of depth that I've been itching to do, but didn't I'm not sure that I really had the right forum for it because, I've got about 4 years that I've been looking at a variety of different things. And I do a lot of tarot. I'm learning a lot of other things. I'm really interested in the ancient wisdoms in astrology and some of the phenomenon that we're experiencing these days and some of the conspiracy theories, which we know are conspiracies until they're proven by science, sometimes to be true or debunked and proven to be false. But in the in between, there's a lot of stuff in the in between. And I kind of, stumbled across this question that I had. I was, on the Ellie Dreams Down Under channel, I take a lot of requests. And people, it all started off, at the beginning of COVID with people being really anxious and wanting answers to things. And I had stumbled onto YouTube almost like an accident because I was chasing a prophecy that appeared to be coming true that I'd seen in the 1980s. And all of this, they're all episodes all by themselves. However, I ended up on YouTube. I was reading tarot, minding my own business, and people started, having questions. So I put feelers out there and I said, you know what? I will read on anything that you like. Ask me questions and I'll read on it. And so pretty much every day of the year, that's what I've been doing for years. And then people started getting more and more interested in the big questions like why are we here? What's reality? What's the meaning of being, alive and everything
Mm.
associated with that? And so I started doing readings, and then something happened. There were a couple of things that started happening in the news. People started reporting on, sightings and things. My own mother had a couple of experiences, which were big question marks. And, she's in her early 80s. She's very bricks and mortar. She's not a woo woo kind of person. And she'd come in white as a sheet, and tell me about things that she'd experienced. And then I do research on the internet and discover that it's been happening around the world. And I've got an interest in learning about philosophy and ancient wisdoms and things. And so I started reading up, and then I started doing tarot readings. And I use a very old deck, 35-year-old deck. I always have the same definitions for my cards so that I can't hide behind, pretending that there's something there that isn't there. And my viewers who have been watching me for 4 years, they know what I see in the cards because I've been explaining it the same way for years.
You know, I hate to interrupt you, but I've got to say that I realized after watching you for a while, the Ellie Dreams Down Under channel where you do the tarot every time, I'm now realizing that I'm learning the
Yeah,
tarot.
that's the whole point. That's the whole
When
point.
you put a card down, I go, oh, that's, this or the other. And I know what, the meanings of I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning without even trying.
I'm really happy to hear that. And a lot of people say that. And that's because, it is complex. There's a lot to look at. You have to look at relationship between cards and everything. But if you get this basic understanding, which I'm always using the same framework, you begin to see how the message is obvious. It's there.
Yeah.
And I started doing, I think, I can't remember what it was. Was it selfishness? Somebody asked me to do a reading on something like selfishness, I think, something like that. And I thought, okay, this isn't going to be very interesting. And so I started doing the reading, and it brought up a topic that led me to another reading. And then I'm getting the same message finally. I did a reading on disclosure, and it linked to other things that I had done, and the relationships there were all the same. And there was a message there that is sort of, it really sparked curiosity. The message continually kept repeating itself, and that is that we are kind of being monitored as humanity. And there might actually be something out there. I don't know who or what it is, but it's beyond our traditional understanding of what we see on earth and what we've been taught in school and with our families and with religion and things. And it almost felt like that we're being monitored or watched or graded in a way. And it's been determined that that's as far, we've come as far as we can go in our current framework, and that we need to, something is happening to give us a little shift into something new. But what is it, and where is it coming from? And has it been predicted or identified in the past? And my curiosity exploded. And then you came along and suggested that I show up at
More work, Ellie. Do another show.
KTRA, and
You
I'm
go with
thinking to myself, can I cope with more? I don't know, can I cope? And then I thought, yeah, I can cope because this is really important to me. I want to get to the bottom of it or scratch the surface as much as I can. And I bet you if I'm really curious about what's in the energy right now and where's it going to take us, I bet you there's someone else out there. There's got to be at least one other person out
Yeah.
there who has the same curiosity as me.
Well,
So
my
here I am.
hope is that the information that you bring out is going to be something that brings people together. And I think, now, you tell me what you think about this, but it seems to me like this ridiculousness that goes on out there, this fighting and this divisiveness, to me, it almost feels like the last gasp or the death throes of our current situation. Like the darkness kind of rising up in protest because it knows that we are getting ready to go beyond it. So in a way, even though it's horrible, all this fighting and people, families, everyone being divided, might be a sign, because we always resist change. It's sort of a natural human reaction, is to try to resist change, because even the horrible known is sometimes easier to deal with than the unknown to people, like change.
Do you
Do
know,
you think it could be true
I
that
actually, go on.
no, do you think it could be true that this is why it's boiled up so much, is because it's getting ready to shift? Does
Yeah.
that make
Do you know
sense at
what
all?
I think about? What I think about all the time is, which kind of makes it sound really familiar to people. You know, when you have a toddler, and a toddler is growing up at a point in their life where they're going to have to understand that there are rules, that there are boundaries that can't be crossed or should be crossed or can't be blurred or whatever. It's because they're being formed as a person. And it reminds you of that moment in the supermarket when some poor young mother is dealing with the tantrum kid who's kicking and screaming on the, no, 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 a toddler who just will not behave. And everyone is waiting for the mother to take control, but the mother knows her toddler, and she knows that she can either make a fool of herself and also be a toddler and yell and scream and be out screamed by the toddler, or she can stand there and ignore him or her and wait for that extinction point where they're fussing and screaming and tantruming until finally they realize that's it and they surrender. And when they surrender, they grow up a little bit.
Mm.
And that's what this reminds me of, is we're at that point where we're like the toddler who is refusing to develop any further. And so we're in a tantrum stage. that just gets more and more hostile and divisive and outrageous until finally there's a catalyst moment and we're forced to kind of turn from 2 to 3
Yeah.
and kind of grow up a little bit. And I think it's coming, and I think there's so much evidence that it is.
Oh gosh, I hope so. It would sure be nice. I mean, we definitely uh, need to evolve beyond some of this craziness and wars and all that is dark in the world. Uh, and I wonder, like how that will come about. How will it manifest? How will we see this evolution? Will we see people that are, at odds today, somehow resolving things? Will there be, some big revelation that we all go, oh, okay, I get it now. I got to do this. I mean, what do you foresee, if anything in particular, about how this
Well,
is gonna
I've
evolve?
got, I'm trying to keep my mind open so that I'm not making too much of a judgment. But what I will say is looking at it in terms of tarot or astrology, for example, on the astrological side, we do have the planets are all lining up into that age of Aquarius that has been predicted. And physically, that is what's happening. When you start to generate your astrology charts, you're seeing, and most recently, I think it was Pluto has moved into Aquarius and has a relatively long cycle of, I think, 20 years. And it's also quite unusual. A lot of the planets are lining up to this age of Aquarius, and the Aquarian age is one where there's a lot of technological advances, a lot of friction. There might be a lot of disharmony, and questioning the status quo happens a lot in at this point as well. But it also leads to a new way of thinking, which is more collective and supportive and also has more feminine elements to it. On the tarot side, what I can say is that I've been looking at messages that seem to indicate that, yes, there's going to be, there could be natural phenomenon like weather patterns changing, climate changes, disasters, things that cause distress and destruction and require rebuilding. Who knows? However, I am beginning to really feel that there is something outside of what we know that is going to become apparent to us in the future. And one of the things that I'm hoping that I can do as Human Ascension with Ellie progresses and the show progresses is test some of the theories of when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. There are a couple of dates out there that people have been talking about as being relevant to messages that have been received and prophecies from the past, and even recent predictions from notable people. And I'd like to test some of those to see how true they might be and whether they link to things that have been also predicted long in the past, thousands of years ago, perhaps, trying to find where these things marry up and whether there's a cycle. And, for example, you've heard of the fourth turning, for example. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it, but could you define that for the
Okay.
audience?
So there's a principle of there being four turnings, which are cycles, and everything in life, everything in reality, or everything in what we call reality is a cycle. Think of us and think of the world as being in the similar cycle to your average vegetable that you're growing in the garden. It begins from a seed, it turns into a seedling, it matures, and then it develops flowers, and the flowers give way to fruit, and then the fruit falls and rots, and the seeds within the fruit begin the cycle all over again. Well, there are, on the same principle, cycles in everything. And one of them is this fourth turning cycle, which is, it generally takes place, it has 4 parts, 4 segments, and it takes place over the course of, say, an average lifetime of, say, 80 years. So each segment of the cycle is approximately 20 years in length, give or take. And one of the things that can change the length is our free will and our ability to use things like technology and other influences to hold things at bay for a little while and delay them, which is the reason why cycles might be taking a little bit longer these days, because we have more ability, because we're more technologically advanced than we used to be. And so we can hold the inevitable at bay for a little bit longer. The first cycle is the birth of something brand new. And so think about, I don't know, a decade where lots of new advancement was to take place, being able to go to the moon in the 60s or something like that. And this whole flower power kind of element and the peace and love movement and this brand new way of thinking and feminism and civil rights and all kinds of things kind of appearing during that time. And it's all celebrated as being something new. And then the second phase is one of innovation and fine tuning some of the knowledge and abilities in that new age. And then phase 3 is about getting a little bored with this because it's getting kind of old now and we're accustomed to it. We're beginning to find flaws with our new age. And then the fourth turning is where it starts to get a bit too much. We're sick of it. We want something else now. And that's where we appear to be right now, is at that fourth turning stage. It was predicted. It was predicted to have occurred somewhere at around about the turn of the century. But because of our technological advancement and our abilities, we've been able to hold it at bay a little bit with the status quo and with the current world order. You see, because the current world order is run by a very powerful group who have a lot of tools and resources at their disposal and a lot of power, but they can't hold it at bay forever. They can rely on the current status quo, but they can't hold it at bay forever because the rest of us want something different. So there's this moment, this toddler moment of tantrum where no one's getting on and the friction increases and intensifies. And then finally that extinction moment occurs and we shift from the fourth turning back into the first turning of the next age. And I think that's where we currently are. We're just about to fall over the edge into that new age.
I think we're racing toward it like a bunch of lemmings,
Yeah, I reckon we are.
toward the edge of the cliff. Circling back to what you said earlier about that you think you get the impression of being monitored, of being sort of graded. Who would that be by? Are you talking about another species? Are you talking about ETs? Are you talking about some sort of spirit council or what? Or the powers that be that are running the world? Who do you feel we're being monitored by?
Well, I don't think it's the powers that be. I think that when it comes to, sometimes they're called the elite. Sometimes, I don't know. I don't want to put a particular label on them, but that small 1% of the world's population that have a lot and seem to pull a lot of strings, and they own most of the industry and technology and news that we consume, and so they kind of control the framework that we live in. I don't think they're the ones. I think they are the resistance to change because they very much need to be in the status quo in order to survive this materialistic kind of treadmill that they put the rest of us on, where we're busy trying to get somewhere and we're destined to kind of do okay if we work our guts out, but never really get beyond that point. That's where they want to keep us, right? I don't think they're the ones who are monitoring us. However, I I'm going to go back to when I was young. And I had this belief that I don't know where it came from. I can't tell you. When I was really, really young, from about the age of 4 up until the time where I discovered boys, so, 13-ish. And then everything else fell out of my head because all I could think of was boys.
Exactly. Yeah.
as you do. But in that 8-year or so period, I believed, I never told my parents, I never told anyone, but I genuinely believed that humans were sitting on a petri dish being examined by a bunch of aliens and that we were an experiment. And I didn't watch science fiction. I didn't have an alien fetish in it. I didn't have an older brother who introduced me to this. My parents would have thought I was talking Chinese if I told them anything like that. So I don't know where it came from. I think it's a bit simplistic to think that we're sitting on a petri dish, right? But I think the concept is that there's something, an entity outside of Earth, whether it's extraterrestrial or spiritual, or whether that's the same thing but just being interpreted differently by different people. That's one of the things I'd like to be able to examine on the show.
When I was little, I used to beg my mother to admit that I was adopted because I thought I was from another planet. And she goes, "Oh, I believe I was there, when you
I used to think I was adopted too. Isn't that funny? How old were you?
Oh gosh, from the time I was little. And that could come from, I'm the middle sister of 3 sisters, and my sisters, in their way of being, are very similar. They both did everything just right, graduated college, did all this other stuff. And I was out there wilding out in the music industry and then in TV and, all this crazy stuff. So, I guess that's why I felt that way, because even when I was little, I felt there was a similarity between them, but I was different. But we did all favor physically, so it was a silly idea. But I used to beg my mom, please just tell me. I don't mind. She wouldn't admit it.
Yeah, it's funny how, I don't know whether a lot of kids feel like maybe they were adopted, even if they weren't.
That'd be an interesting question to pose to a group, to poll people.
But I thought that I was too, and it was very difficult to convince me that I wasn't as well. But now, now when I look at photos of myself next to my mum and my dad when they were about my age, I'm so not adopted. I look like I've been AI generated composite of my mother and my father.
Right.
Yeah, there's no denying it. Yeah.
That's funny. That is really funny. But yeah, we get a lot of, or it seems like we're almost born with these ideas about being different or something like that. But yeah, it was, I definitely thought I was adopted. I thought I came from somewhere else. And that's the weird part to me, that I would have thought that. Being adopted would not be anything unusual, but being from another planet, that's a little bit different.
Well, that there is a possibility that we all came from somewhere else originally, because, they recently were studying, is it meteors, the ones that land? Meteors,
meteorites, yeah.
Meteorites, that's it. And they were looking at the substance on meteorites, and they discovered that many of them contained single-cell organisms that then, obviously, when the meteorite lands on Earth, the single-cell organism has come with it and may have actually been the first form of life that then germinated and evolved into other forms of life. And so where did those single cell organisms come from? Because
Yeah,
they didn't
that's
come from here.
somewhere.
And what have they eventually evolved into? And so, maybe we all came from that single cell organism that was sitting on a meteorite that managed to crash through the atmosphere and land here on Earth and
We
become
are
us.
stardust.
We might be. And so, I think that people look at things often, not everyone, because I think there are people who have a really open mind. But, psychologists think of things in a psychological way, and astrophysicists look at it in an astrophysical way, and astrologers look at it this way, and, geologists look at it that way. But maybe it's actually a little bit of all of that. And Christians look at it another way, and, you've got different faiths. I mean, there are so many crossover points, and that's one of the things I'm doing in the very first episode is I'm taking a very simple concept of something that's been said over here, over there, and looking at them together and finding how they're connected.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
there are so many things out there that seem like they're not connected, but they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like with the idea of the Great Flood, so many different cultures have that same story. It's told a little bit differently, but it's the same story. So maybe there's something to that, and I keep thinking about that idea of being monitored, and I guess it would make sense that it would be someone from outside, that's monitoring us, and that could be extraterrestrial, it could be extra dimensional, it could be a number of things. And with this idea of the meteorites, basically containing the beginnings of life, it's interesting. I know a lot of, I grew up in Oklahoma, and of course around many different Native American tribes. And in most of those that I'm familiar with, that I grew up with, a piece of meteorite is the highest possible gift that you can give someone.
Really?
And they call them pieces of God. So
that's interesting.
God's the creator, don't know.
Well, the Native Americans have got a great flood story, don't they?
They do.
And the Australian Aboriginals also have a great flood story as well. Look at the differences. And these are both really old cultures that you would think, grew up separate by thousands of miles between them.
Right. Yeah. And they're definitely similar stories. Yeah, I'm familiar with some of those different stories, and how the tribes, it's an integral part of their history and their beliefs. But you just reminded me of like a million things.
Sorry.
Oh my God. Yeah, the idea of extraterrestrials, is the first thing that comes to mind, because it does seem like there may have been life on other planets at one time that became unsustainable, and that sort of thing. So it would make sense that we would be monitored as a living planet, because to make sure that we don't mess it up too much, and I guess that's what we are doing. But I wonder at what point will there be an intervention, or will there be? The other thing was, when you said, wonder if all kids think they're adopted, or a lot of people think they're adopted. I had this dream all the time as I was growing up, and I called it my end of the world dream.
Oh,
And it was the same every time. I would be outside, and there would just be armada of spaceships flying in, like in formations, different groups. And it was like not the end of the world, like it was going to explode, but it was the end of the world as we know it. And I had the
that's
same dream.
exactly right. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think
Right.
it's the end of the old world, and yeah,
But
the beginning of something
interestingly,
totally different.
there was a period in my life where I was doing a lot of research into this alien abduction idea or phenomenon. And I actually went so far as to go to school to be a hypnotherapist. Then I realized that wasn't the best tool necessarily, because it's so easy to lead people. And, the idea is people want to please the hypnotist. So if you're looking for information on aliens, they're going to give it to you, you know.
Oh,
Uh, I'm not saying it's never efficient, but uh, I just found a lot of people kind of using it, and I just checked out of that whole situation. But I was one of the founders of an organization that still exists called Close Encounters Research Organization, CERO. And we had these group meetings every month, and they were like support meetings, and people could come and tell their experiences and meet up with other people that were going through similar things. And so at the meetings, I would always ask people, does anybody have an end of the world meeting, end of the world dream? And so many people had the exact dream
wow.
that I had. I don't have it anymore. It's funny. And I wonder if it's because maybe I kind of figured it out or something. I don't know. But I mean, it was vivid. It was one of those dreams that, it felt like it's really happening, not like you're dreaming it. But it was so amazing that so many people. It'll be interesting if we hear back from anybody that might be listening. This is, oh my God, I had the same dream. But so I wonder if that dream is just symbolic, in that, there will be a change and it will be very different, and it's not the world as we knew it, or if it's literal, and there really are going to be, the skies were full. And I mean, some of them were like projecting pictures on the outsides of them. I remember there
Mm.
was one big one that was like a cartoon was showing on it. And I remember, because I was a child, I remember thinking, oh, they're trying to show us that they're nice or they're friendly by showing a cartoon, being depicted on the outside of the spacecraft.
That's really interesting. I I actually talked about this. I don't know. It may have even been yesterday on the Ellie Dreams Down Under channel. Yeah, did I talk about? Oh, you probably haven't seen it, but I did a video where I talked about an old dream that I had. Um,
That's on my list. I saw it. Was it the one that it said something about prophecy in your thumbnail, or
I think it said sinister dream or
Sinister
something.
Dream? That's what it was. Yeah.
Oh, so you haven't seen it? You haven't seen it?
No, no, no. I'm gonna
Oh well,
watch
then
it
I'll
today.
ruin it. I'll ruin it for you and tell you then,
Go
shall
ahead
I?
anyway. I'll watch it anyway.
A couple of years ago, I had, because you talked about the cartoon thing, and that was at the very end. But a few years ago, I had this dream that I was in bed, asleep, and something was applying pressure. I was on my side, and something was sitting on my shoulder or my arm or something, and applying pressure and pushing me down like a heavy weight. And I've only ever had a dream that I could feel a sinister kind of weight trying to push on me once before, which was unrelated. But this was really quite prominent. And in my dream, I thrashed to kind of get it off me, and it went off me. And then the next thing I saw were these arms that were stretching up from scarily down below. So I don't know where they were coming from, but these black, grey, long armed hands were trying to grab me from down below. So, it could have been like hell kind of place, or some and trying to grab me. And I had this thought in my mind during the dream. I'm watching it happen and it's trying to grab my arms and my hands. And I'm thinking, no, you know what? I'm not going to let this thing grab me. I'm going to grab it. And because I'm just not going to let it grab me and take me to wherever it is it wants me to go. So I started reaching, trying to grab at this kind of willowy long arm with hands, the two of them that were grabbing at me. And I managed to get it. And I remember, pardon, even though I was asleep, I remember I could feel the solid nature of the hand that I had grabbed in my hand, which is quite unusual to feel the solid nature of it.
Right.
And the thing is, as soon as I grabbed it, it freaked out and it tried to get away from me, and it slipped away and it vanished. And then I woke up, and I was still lying on my side when I woke up. And the first thing I saw was the wall, and there was a cute little cartoon happening on the wall next to me, as if to reassure me that you're in good company now.
Yeah.
You got rid of the sinister dream, and now you're okay. And the funny thing is, at the moment that I saw that cartoon, I know that I was awake, because I looked at it and I thought, I'm awake, but it's still in motion there. Something's still happening. What's going on? And I watched it for a few minutes, and then I got up and went to the loo.
Oh
So, and
my God.
and then when I came back into the bedroom, I looked around and I couldn't see it anymore. But that cartoon image is interesting, because I've seen cartoon images like that, having woken up from something just for a moment. And I wonder if it is a way to reassure you with something so ridiculously innocent that you can't possibly be frightened of it.
Yeah. We're not bad. Look, we're funny. We're fun. That is so weird. Yeah. But that's the impression I felt even then, even as a child. And I had it right up on into adulthood. But I think it started going away when I started finding other people were having the same dream, because
That's
I haven't
interesting.
had that dream in a long, long time. It's really wild.
Well, a lot of the things that we need to know in life come to us in our dreams, don't they? And, you can have these lucid dreams like the one that I had, where I was able to take control of the dream. But you also get these dreams that are, you know, when I was younger, I was trying to decide. I came into a little bit of money, right? Enough to either do something like open up a restaurant, or go and study overseas. And I remember going to bed that night and thinking, well, which should I do? My boyfriend and I were talking about opening up this restaurant. Thank goodness I didn't, because I reckon we would have failed flat on our face miserably. But I went to bed, and it was a real option that I could have chosen. And I said to myself, when I wake up, I really need to know what to do. Shall I go and travel and go to university in America? Or should I open up this restaurant, which we were going to call Da Vinci's? And it was going to be Italian, like there aren't any other Italian restaurants around. And in my dream, I dreamt of an aeroplane taking off. And it felt really good. And so when I woke up, I knew that I'm going to go. And within a month, I was gone. I actually spent the next 6 years in America studying. So,
Wow.
and I'd have to say it was one of the best decisions I ever made, for lots of reasons. but it came in a dream. So dreams are, they can be where your wisdom comes from, where you sort things out.
Yeah, yeah. And I do wonder. I mean, a lot of people do have prophetic dreams, and sometimes I think I used to have a dream where I would be outside, and it would be usually like kind of a cloudy day or maybe dusky or something, and there was a plane that was coming down, a huge commercial airliner, and it was on fire, and it was coming down, and I mean, obviously, it makes no sense, but I was standing on the ground, and I could see through the windows of the plane the people, like
Oh,
all terrified and screaming and everything. And after 9/11, I didn't have that dream anymore, and I kind of connected with the Pentagon plane, the one that crashed into the Pentagon, and that the people, brought it down. The passengers decided to bring it down, and they went and attacked and made the plane crash before it could do more damage. But so I don't know that that was prophetic, but it was something sort of clicked in after that happened, and for some reason I didn't need that dream anymore. Uh, I don't know why I needed it in the first place, or even the end of the world dream. But it's just interesting that people can, disparate people can have the same exact dream and even call it the same thing.
I think you're underestimating yourself there when you say you don't really think you've had prophetic dreams. I actually think that we all do have. We just, it's been beaten out of us to be learning math and English or whatever language you speak in school, and history and all of these things, and home economics and whatever it is that they're teaching us in school. They keep us focused on um, focused on the leaves of the trees so that we can't see the whole forest.
Right.
And I've had so many of those dreams. Then, I mean, obviously my channel is called Ellie Dreams Down Under for a reason. I've had so many of those dreams, but I'm not the only one. I think that everyone has them, but it all depends on how the level of attention you're giving, and the level of credit that you're giving yourself as well. I mean, to dream about a plane coming down that's on fire with people that you can see is really a significant dream to have out of nowhere.
Mm,
And I think we can poo poo it and say, oh, it's just a coincidence. But you know what? That's one of the things that I think, I want to scratch the surface of. There's so much more taking place. And when we look at them in detail, like I know that there were a lot of people, myself included, who were having dreams about the need to hoard, to go buy water and food and things before COVID became a thing.
really?
And I haven't actually admitted this to my viewers yet, but I almost um, sort of have said on a couple of occasions that I have this urge that you go do that in the past. But then I thought, well, why am I doing that? I'm a public facing person. I'm going to freak people out. So I don't. And then it turns out there's like a big weather event, or the COVID thing happened,
Yeah.
or, and I think that this happens to everyone. It's just that we've been trained to ignore it as much as we can. And it's all a sign of the fact that there's something beyond us that's much more than just what we traditionally know about.
Right. I I did used to have these dreams that were immediately fulfilled, uh, like that very same day or upon waking. Um, but there were always things that didn't really matter. One time I was asleep and I was dreaming about seeing orange lipsticks smeared all over the walls and the curtains. And I got a phone call that woke me up. It was one of my girlfriends, and we were talking, and she goes, "Oh my God." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "The baby just got my orange lipstick and he smeared it all over the walls and the curtains." And I went like, "Oh my God, why would I dream that?" And then I dreamed that one time I fell asleep in the afternoon, which was unusual for me. And I dreamed about seeing my uncle at the airport. And we didn't live in the same city or anything. And later on that night, my girlfriend called, same girlfriend, by the way, and said, "Hey, let's go out and do some things." We were like bored. And finally, she goes, "Hey, let's go out to the airport and watch the planes come in." And at that time, there was not all that security in place. And there was an observation deck where you could go outside and stand. And I mean, the planes would just literally come right over your head. It was scary as hell, but it was fun. We
Yeah.
were in our 20s. And we went out, watched the planes come in. I'm walking down the corridor and I see this group of men headed my way. And the closer they get, the more I'm looking. And one of them is my uncle. And I had just dreamed that afternoon that I saw him at the airport. And it was my uncle and some other guy and Mickey Mantle.
Is it random?
It was him, though, because my uncle invented a batting practice tool. It was called Batmaster, and Mickey Mantle, bought into it. And it's still sold today. I think it's called Mickey Mantle's Batmaster. And they had been somewhere to meet, on some kind of distribution deal or something like that. But I had no inclination or idea that my uncle was in the same town I was in right then. I had no advanced knowledge of that. But what did it mean? It meant, "Hi, Uncle Glenn," and that's all it was.
But
But
yeah,
it
but
was
the
so
thing is, it was
real.
there. I actually, I've had little ones that I know you've heard about, which I won't bore you with, but I've had a
Oh,
big one.
you got
Oh,
some
like
good.
I think recently, I think I mentioned because you said you've been watching the show a little bit, and I
Bit
talked
every
about.
day.
Well, I used to have a shop, and one of my co-workers went into because we live in a rural kind of area, like a beach area, and because Australia is all beach, but and he went into the city, the big bad city, for some kind of a concert or something, I think. And I dreamt that night, even though he and I were work colleagues. It's not like he was my brother or a really close friend, but we did have a connection. I dreamt that he was in a fight. And the next day I got to work and was expecting him, and he called me and he said that him and his friends had been jumped by a kind of a gang of city boys, and he was a country boy. The country
Oh,
boys look different when they
yeah,
show up. They look like country boys, and that
yeah.
the country boys had been jumped by the city boys, and one of them had been beaten up, and they'd given as good as they got, but he had to hang out with his friend who was pretty upset and had to go to hospital and things like that.
Oh my
And
God.
it's funny because I dreamt it the night before out of nowhere. But one of the most striking dreams that still really surprised me was I had a dream about a door. And this was a few years ago, and I've talked about it on the channel. I dreamt of a door, and I went up. It was just in the middle of nowhere, this door. And I went up to the door, and I could hear a voice saying, screaming, not screaming, yelling, like in a strong, authoritative, kind of scary man voice. Open the door, open the door, open the door. And I was a bit frightened to open the door because of how forceful this sound was. and the door seemed to be nowhere. It was just in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, I didn't know how to open the door because if I remember correctly in the gym, I don't even think it had a handle. But all I did was after this order of me opening the door, I just touched the door and it opened by itself.
Mm.
And at the time, I couldn't understand it, but I did say to my viewers, it was so disturbing because when I opened the door, I felt death. I just felt like there was this death. Well,
Mm.
guess what happened? I think it was 2 days after I had posted my video. This judge, I think her name is Esther Solis. She's a judge. She was part of a case that I'm not sure exactly what the case was about, but there was a knock on her door, and it was a FedEx guy,
Oh, yes.
and she was down in the basement, I think, and her son and her husband were upstairs. And this FedEx guy, he wasn't a real FedEx guy. He was someone else who was part of a court case, and
Disgruntled,
he didn't like her ruling, and he was dressed up in a FedEx outfit. When her husband and her son opened the door, I think he killed one of them and wounded another one. He
killed
was
her
looking
son, her young
he was
son.
looking for her. Well,
Mm.
that was one of the most shocking dreams because the dream made no sense until I saw that news report, and then it did make sense.
Open the door.
And so, but that, I think we all have those, and I think her name is Esther Solis. She's quite vocal now, but at the
Yeah,
time, I didn't know who she was. I didn't know any of the circumstances, and
I remember
yeah,
when it happened, and it was so sad. Her son, was like 20 or something, and he
yeah,
had a whole life to go and nothing to do with anything that this guy was upset about. He was just another crazy person,
the world
we
has plenty of those as well.
oh boy, we got a whole world full of them, and it's really strange because, of course, we all where we sit in America is so vocal that we all know about the division here and how bad it is. But I can't think of a country where there's not a lot of it going on. That's what does sort of make me think it portends some big change or something because it's not just America. It's everywhere. I've seen a lot of division for Australia, for instance, uh, and in the UK, in France, they're holding on for dear life in France about like we are here. Uh, and then of course there's Ukraine and Russia and all this other businesses. China, it's like it's a worldwide sickness or whatever it is, malady that it's not just here in America. And that's what makes it seem more like an authentic shift of some kind.
Yeah, I think, every country has its own way of dealing with it, and some countries are more evolved than others. You just reminded me, I had a conversation with a woman the other day. It was last this week. She's a psychologist and she surprised the hell out of me. I live in a little town by the beach, right? Where population doesn't even seem to be big enough to warrant this. And in my discussion with her, she said that she's a psychologist. She works in a practice that has 40 psychologists. And I said, why would you need 40 psychologists? And she says, yeah, people don't talk about it in Australia. And that's the reason why I really admire America, because when it airs its laundry, it releases the toxins and
Ah,
everyone gets to know what's going on. When you think about the area I live in, which is, semi-rural, how can there be 40 psychologists all bunched up in one
right.
practice? For who? But she said that's the difference. In Australia, people keep things to themselves. So even though we know that there's a lot going on everywhere, America is unique in the fact that it's airing its dirty laundry, which is healthy. It's inconvenient. It's inconvenient and it upsets people, but it's healthy.
Wow. You know, I've just discovered, Ellie, that we have now gone 4 minutes over time.
We're going to get in trouble with Bill.
We're going to leave this problem for Bill and Eric to sort out. I just got carried away. I'm sorry. But thank you so much, Ellie. And we're going to be looking for your new show coming up in about a week or so. Or actually, by the time this airs, it's going to be right away. So
it's next week.
Field for Ellie's show, Human Ascension with Ellie. And it's going to be airing live on Friday nights at 11 p.m., the old Night Vision slot. And I'm going to be going forward to midnight on Friday nights. So it'll be Ellie and then me. See, I'm no fool. I know how popular Ellie is. I'm going to try to siphon as many of her fans as I possibly can. All right, Ellie. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Sorry to take too much time.
Oh, it's fine. We'll have more fun as time goes on now that we're in the same place.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.